I'm a UFO investigator and a contact organizer. I work with networks of people who are having ongoing sightings of things that we call UFOs, and I assist them to carry out a program to attract UFOs to secure research sites where we can interact with them in limited ways, signaling, some limited telepathic communication, that sort of thing. My name is Dr. Joseph Burkes, and I'm a retired internal medicine physician. What I found was that the consciousness connection, the mental link between UFO intelligence and people who have sightings is profound. When I started doing work back in 1992, I was trained by another emergency room physician, Dr. Greer, and within the first 3 weeks of us going out into the field and doing contact work and asking for sightings, people started having individual sightings on their own, separate from field work, under highly congruent circumstances. That means the circumstances were the same. 3 of us had sightings of UFOs in our cars alone while driving home. This was not a random event. UFOs also showed up at our research site as well, which was in the Santa Susana Pass. So I knew that whatever this intelligence was, they were watching, they knew who we were, and they were staging these sightings separate from us as a way of communicating, yes, we know who you are, we know where you are, and we can contact you at any time. We're in the field and these objects show up. Okay. I mean, I've been in the field where I've seen dozens of UFOs, not just anomalous lights in the sky that do a little dance, but I've seen what looked like structured craft within a few hundred yards of my position. So I'm not just saying we should communicate mentally. I think because we're physical beings, but we're not just physical beings, we're also spiritual beings too, we should request interactions at all levels of encounter. Mental, physical, spiritual, whatever. So I think we should go out in the field in groups. There's safety in numbers. And also people can corroborate your sightings. And there's always the possibility of, video documentation, which is a good idea. When I was in Russia, they called me a white crow. The bird that is black, they called me Белая ворона, which means white crow. It means I'm an odd man out. Even within the UFO subculture, I've put forward very radical views, some of which are disturbing to contact experiencers, because one of the things I've learned directly from my contact work is that this intelligence showed me how they create illusion. In other words, what we call a sighting or an object, maybe not a physical object, but a holographic type projection. A visual display is the term that Dr. Jacques Vallée used in his book, The Invisible College. And I think the whole notion that every structured object that we see in the sky is indeed a spaceship is naive. I think that some objects clearly are entirely physical, but many, perhaps even most, are holographic type projections that are there to alert us of the presence of this intelligence, but are not necessarily filled with friendly or hostile ETs that can land and make nice with us or hurt us. I think most of what we're seeing are holographic type projections. Well, this is very controversial because you have large organizations like Mutual UFO Network, a very responsible group that spent their entire career of 50-some plus years cataloging the physical characteristics of sightings as if they were all objects. And here I am saying that perhaps most of what you're seeing are not hallucinations, which is a medical condition. You're seeing something that is a projection. That's going to rain on their parade. I think this phenomena is based on their capacity to create illusion. Mm-hmm. Most of the information that we get about these various races come from people who emerge out of altered states. The classic contact experience is someone goes to bed, the next morning they wake up and their bedclothes may be rearranged, or they may have a small scoop mark on their bodies, and they have memories of being on board a spacecraft. But there are no photographs, there's no police reports. Mm-hmm. The mate who was sleeping in the bed with them has no recollection of any of what happened. because the experiencer was targeted alone. And so there is no independent objective corroboration of any of what happened is true. Nevertheless, this is a contact experience. These people, I've had similar contact experiences at the mental level. These are real forms of communication. Nevertheless, because this intelligence has tremendous psi capability, we should be open to the distinct probability that they can create at the level of consciousness a virtual reality sort of a la the Matrix. Mm-hmm. So you're left with a contact experience which, in the words of Mobius in the movie Matrix, is more real than real, but nevertheless is still a technological artifact that impacts on your consciousness. I'm asking people to embrace something that's complex, mm-hmm. because the level of denial in our culture is so ferocious that I have people telling me, how can you possibly tell me that I'm hallucinating? And I tell them, I'm not telling you, I'm saying that these are illusions. Mm-hmm. And yet some objects are undoubtedly physical. You know, there are cases where UFOs have shown up over missile silos, both in the United States and the former Soviet Union, and have changed the launch codes or have deactivated the missiles, or in the Russian case, have actually enabled the missiles to prepare for launch. Well, that's not a hologram that's doing that. Yeah. They're directly interacting with our technology, and they're sending a very important message, which Captain Salas, who was the missile man at the base in 1967, I believe, when a whole missile battery was shut down as a UFO hovered over the base, his impression was they were telling us, you know, get rid of these nuclear weapons. And as a former anti-nuclear weapon activist, that kind of message is music to my ears. I want to get to know those people or that intelligence that's willing to send that message. Sure. I think the assumption that extraterrestrial spacecraft is the whole explanation for UFOs is likely incomplete. This intelligence has been around for a very long time. If you go back in history, you see artwork from the medieval period, Renaissance, showing saucers. And if you read the work of Dr. Jacques Vallée, Wonders in the Skies is a book that chronicles sightings that go back even to ancient Egyptian times. So the idea that these are extraterrestrial spacecraft, so-called visitors who just arrived and are here to study our planet, fails to recognize the ancient origins of this phenomena. So I think we have to be open to many possibilities, whether they come from other dimensions. Certainly is an intriguing thought. Space travel is daunting. Outside of the Earth's envelope, radiation is intense. As a physician, I can tell you that without lead shielding, humans going anywhere outside the Earth's protective envelope would have a 100% chance of dying of radiation sickness or cancer. Mm-hmm. Once you get outside the sun's helioshield, which is a magnetic field that surrounds the solar system, the gamma radiation in space is even greater. So the idea that these so-called visitors are coming from other dimensions is attractive in that they've solved that problem of not only traveling enormous distances, but protecting their people from radiation. You know, I'm less certain about the extraterrestrial nature of the phenomena than many of my companions or comrades in this movement. But nevertheless, I think that whoever they are, they're here to help. Mm-hmm. That's the bottom line. And if they're not here to help, and they're indeed our enemy, well, we need to establish dialogue with everybody. After all, the United States negotiated with the former Soviet Union for many years to reduce the risk of nuclear war. They were considered our adversary, or many people who had fought the Reds considered the Russians, the commies, our enemies. But nevertheless, we still had dialogue, exchange, and we interacted with them in ways that were not warlike. So even if the so-called ETs are, some of them don't have our best interests in mind, it's our responsibility to, perhaps even greater, is to engage in dialogue with them to try to negotiate some kind of non-hostile relationship. UCKYA.